The sunrise painted the vast African savanna in a golden glow when John, an avid hiker and nature photographer, first saw the majestic elephants at their morning watering hole. Their quiet roar echoing off the hills seemed like a peaceful symphony of wildlife, but John's heart raced with the anticipation of a rare shot. He remembered the guide's warnings to stay away from solitary males and not to approach youngsters. But the urge to capture the perfect shot overrode caution. Camera in hand, he slowly descended from the safari jeep onto the wet grass, feeling every step. The wind carried the smell of hot earth and elephant dust, and the ground beneath his feet shook with the weight of his hooves. One of the males, the largest, separated from the herd and, with a roar, staggered toward him. The trump soared toward the sky, the trumpeting turned into a menacing roar, and dust swirled around it, hiding the light. John felt a chilling fear as the giant feet froze a step away from him. The last thing he had time to realize was that nature does not forgive mistakes. John arrived at the safari camp as the first golden rays spilled across the savanna. The air held a sharp coolness, soon to be replaced by heat. Dust curled under the jeep's tires as it rolled into position. The guide gave a short nod, and John climbed into the back seat, cradling his camera bag like a fragile artifact. As they rumbled toward the watering hole, the guide spoke in a calm, measured tone. He recounted the old stories about rogue bull elephants, territorial and unpredictable. Males who had been driven from the herd and wandered alone, their tempers quick, their strength unmatched. John listened, but his eyes stayed fixed on the open plain ahead, already imagining the perfect shot. The savanna stretched infinitely, rippling with tall grass and punctuated by lone acacia trees. Herds of antelope darted in the distance. John raised his camera and adjusted the lens, scanning the landscape with the precision of a hunter. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the thrill of witnessing something raw, something unfiltered. As they neared the watering hole, the vehicle slowed. There they were, a small family of elephants standing in the shallow basin. A matriarch drank first, her massive form framed against the rising sun. A calf splashed beside her, trunk flailing in innocent joy. Water caught the light and burst into crystal arcs. John lifted the camera. The shutter clicked. Time stood still. Without a word, John stepped down from the jeep, drawn toward the calf as if pulled by a thread. He crouched low, seeking a better angle, focused on the soft folds of the young elephant's skin, the glint of water on its ears. The grass brushed his knees. The air felt heavier. The largest elephant, a bull standing just beyond the others, turned his head. His eyes locked onto John's. The trunk rose slowly, then shot up in a sudden blast of sound. A deep trumpet echoed across the plain, vibrating through the ground. John didn't move. He raised the camera again, too focused, too certain he had more time. But the bull's foot scraped the earth. The vibration grew. Dust lifted. The space between them shrank in seconds. The guide's voice shouted from behind, but it was swallowed by the savanna's hum. The wind swept past John's ears, carrying nothing but urgency. His hands trembled. His feet didn't move. The shutter clicked again. Then the charge began. A wall of flesh and fury surged forward. Ears flared. Tusks caught the light. The bull's roar rose above everything. And John, frozen in the lens, finally realized the distance between life and death was now measured in strides. John stumbled back, panic overtaking reason, his foot catching on the tripod he had set moments earlier. He twisted awkwardly as his balance gave way. The camera bag slipped from his shoulder and hit the ground with a dull thud. He landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. The dry grass scraped his skin, and for a brief moment, all he could hear was the deep, vibrating rumble of hooves tearing across the earth toward him. The elephant was no longer a majestic figure in the distance. It had become a blur of muscle and rage, closing the space in seconds. Its ears flared, flapping like sails in the wind. Dust rose in sheets as it thundered forward, each step a seismic force. John tried to scramble away, but his legs barely responded, frozen by pain and fear. The beast's momentum was unstoppable. John barely had time to raise his arms in instinctive defense before the first blow landed. A pillar-like foot, wider than his chest, came down with crushing weight onto his right thigh. The impact snapped bone instantly, sending a shock of pain so intense it tore a scream from his throat. He writhed, but the lead was pinned under the immovable mass. A hot flash of agony surged through his spine. The sound of the break echoed unnaturally, louder than any shudder or engine. It was not just a fracture, it was destruction. The pain swallowed everything, white and all-consuming, obliterating any sense of time or location. He could hear the whimper that escaped his own mouth, but it sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. His camera lay shattered a few feet from him, lens cracked and twisted. The guide had already leapt from the jeep, sprinting toward John with a desperation that bordered on feral. But the elephant was already upon him again. With a guttural growl, it lifted its leg and brought it down once more, this time on John's ribs. The blow forced the air from his lungs and bent his body into the earth like wet paper. Blood sprayed into the grass. The guide shouted something, but John couldn't hear. His vision tunneled as the world blurred in shades of red and dust. Inside the safari jeep, panic surged. One tourist grabbed the ignition key with trembling hands and twisted it hard. The engine sputtered to life, roaring louder than expected in the tense silence. But the moment they hit the accelerator, the wheels spun helplessly in thick clay. Mud flew into the air as the vehicle rocked in place, refusing to move. The elephant turned at the sound, its massive head swinging with sudden focus toward the jeep, ears spread wide in challenge. The beast let out a deep, thunderous trumpet and stepped off of John's broken body, sending a final tremor through the ground. Its eyes locked on the source of the noise, nostrils flaring. Dust clung to its flanks as it charged the stuck vehicle, trunk raised high. The tourists inside screamed, fumbling to release the parking brake, but the wheels continued to spin in place. A heavy thump against the side of the jeep shook the frame, throwing cameras and backpacks to the fore. The guide leapt from the back seat, brandishing a dull machete and sprinting through the tall grass. His shout cut through the noise like a crack of lightning. Arms wide, blade glinting in the sun, he ran straight toward the bull, waving the weapon in wide arcs. The elephant skidded to a halt, startled by the unexpected charge. Its momentum wavered, and its front foot stamped once, twice, unsure whether to attack or retreat. The moment of hesitation was enough. The elephant huffed and took a step back. Its giant leg lifted from John's torso, revealing the blood-soaked earth beneath. Ribs bent at unnatural angles rose and fell as John gasped for breath. His face was pale, streaked with sweat and dust, his lips barely moving as he exhaled short, ragged breaths. The guide shouted again, edging closer, machete still raised, forcing the elephant to finally turn away and retreat toward the trees. John blinked slowly, his vision swimming in and out of clarity. Pain bloomed through every nerve, distant and sharp at once. He tried to move his arms, then his legs, but only one responded. His body refused to rise, as if pinned by invisible weight. Blood seeped from his side into the cracked ground beneath him, warm against the cool shadow of the elephant's departure. The guide's voice echoed somewhere above him, urgent and cracking. The horizon tilted, and darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. The savannah spun, and then everything went quiet. The guide gripped John's wrist tightly, dragging him across the rough savannah earth. Blood painted a jagged trail behind them, mingling with deep imprints left by the elephant's feet. John's body, limp and barely responsive, jolted with each bump and root along the path. His breath came in short, rattling gasps, eyes flickering open just long enough to glimpse the rear tire of the jeep spinning in the mud. The wheels groaned and churned, flinging mud in thick clumps, until finally the jeep lurched forward with a violent jolt. The engine roared in desperation as the guide, soaked in sweat and red dust, hauled John up and into the back seat. The vehicle tore across the plain, bouncing wildly over each ridge and furrow, leaving behind the trampled earth and towering silhouettes of the elephants disappearing into the horizon. John's vision faded into red, then black. His limbs grew cold. Pain surged through his abdomen like fire, but then began to vanish, not because the damage healed, but because his body no longer had the strength to register it. Everything felt far away, as though he was watching himself from above, sinking into something too deep to escape. A woman in the back seat pressed torn clothing into the largest wound. Another tourist held his head steady, whispering something he could no longer hear. The guide shouted to someone up front, urging them to drive faster. John's body jerked with every hole in the road, but he was already past the point of flinching. His skin turned pale, speckled with sweat and dirt, and his lips moved soundlessly. The vast savannah, moments earlier a maelstrom of sound and violence, fell into eerie silence. Only the drone of the motor persisted, and the shallow, ragged breath of a man hanging on by a thread. Dust clouds trailed behind them like ghosts, and the red sun slowly began its descent toward the horizon. Inside the jeep, no one spoke anymore. All eyes were fixed on John's chest, watching it rise and fall, each movement weaker than the last. As the jeep cleared the final stretch of dirt road, a shadow passed overhead, the rescue helicopter, blades whirling in a deafening crescendo. It hovered just beyond the park boundary, and medics rushed forward with a stretcher. The moment the doors opened, they reached for John, checking his pulse, shouting instructions none of the tourists could understand through the noise. John was lifted with care, his limp body strapped into place as his arm fell over the side. Blood stained the straps as the stretcher slid into the belly of the aircraft. The medics worked fast, slapping on sensors, wrapping for lines, assessing where they could cut through the clothing without disturbing what was left of his legs. His eyes fluttered open once, but no recognition registered there. Inside the cabin, the lead medic barked commands while applying clamps and pressure packs. They cut through muscle, applied antiseptic, and delivered the first injection of anesthesia. His breathing was shallow, but steadying. The tourniquets held for now. They whispered encouragements he wouldn't hear, focused only on the stopwatch ticking down his survival window. Night had fallen by the time they wheeled John through the glass doors of the Cape Town Trauma Center. The lights above him blurred into white streaks as his bed glided down endless corridors. In the operating room, surgeons and nurses moved with the precision of a drill team. Scalpels sliced, clamps tightened, blood washed away. Machines beeped. Hours passed in a haze of steel and fluorescent light. He awoke in silence. A dim hospital room, faint beeping, filtered light through half-closed blinds. The weight of blankets pressed over empty space where his legs should have been. His throat burned, and his lips were cracked. He turned his head slowly, saw the bag, the monitors, the folded wheelchair waiting in the corner. Then he looked down. The bed was empty below the knees. After a moment, he whispered into the stillness. "I'm alive." His hand gripped the side rail. The scar across his torso pulsed with each breath, a reminder carved in flesh that nature had spared him, but only just.